It's an amazing story of faith that Peter has and that the disciples have in this boat. And we're going to go through this story, but I really want to zero in for just a moment on just this one passage, one incredible passage. Peter out there on the water, and he looks out into the darkness, and they think it's Jesus, but they're not sure. And this is a powerful verse, Matthew 14:28. He says, Lord, if it's you, if it's really you, then command me to come out on the water. If it's really you. And today my hope for you, for every one of you, is that you will look into your situation, whatever it is, however hopeless it seems, however dark or however overwhelming it might be to you, that you would look into that situation and you would look out into that darkness and you would ask for a sign from Jesus, that he's inviting you into a space maybe you've never been in before that requires more faith than you've ever had. Because sometimes the realities of our life bring us to a place where there is nothing and there is no one but Jesus. And there is nothing but a faith that would step out and trust him even when it doesn't make sense. So my hope for you is that today your faith will be stretched and strengthened, and that in the week ahead, whatever you're facing, that you would step out and that you would accept Jesus' call out into a space maybe you've never gone to before. And if that happens, then I will be incredibly happy. You know, we're starting a series today called Unstoppable. And to be unstoppable as a Christ follower, it means that we have to have a faith that goes way beyond borders, way beyond what we think we know, way beyond what we think is reality, into a space where only God rules and reigns, into a space where he calls us to do things that aren't possible. Because really, think about this. If you can do it all yourself, is there any faith that's required? No. But most of us limit our lives to only what we can do, to only what we can see, to only what we can control, only to what we can spreadsheet and have black ink at the bottom. That's all we ever get into. And there is no faith required. If you can spreadsheet everything in your life, if you can make it all balance out, if you can figure out everything that's going to come at you, there's no faith required. But to follow Jesus requires faith. That's my premise. And my hope today is to stoke your faith, to stoke the flames of your faith in Jesus Christ enough that you will do whatever he's calling you to next. That's my mission today with this message, is to help you get to that space. Now, a follower of Jesus, we call them disciples. And around here, our mission is to take holy risks that make disciples who make disciples. But the question becomes, then what or who is a disciple? Now, there's all kinds of different things depending on what church you attend, and obviously you're at Phos today, so I'm going to just assume that you attend Phos for the most part. I want to share with you and when I use the word disciple, what am I meaning? What does this say? And I would encourage you to make notes today on this. And you have these probably that you got when you came in, and on the back of this, there's space to make notes and to write down your ideas about this. And so if you want to take some notes on what a disciple is, then that would be really cool. And so let me go through what I believe a disciple is, who I believe a disciple is. And here are some words. There's more I could put up here, but a disciple is a follower of Jesus. A disciple exhibits the fruits of the Spirit, things like love and joy and peace and patience, kindness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. The closer you're moving to those fruits of the Spirit, meaning that God is active in your life, the more I believe you're probably becoming a follower, a disciple of Jesus. The further away you move from those might mean not so much. Okay, so I'm not just talking about knowing a bunch of stuff here. You're becoming truly a child of God in every way. You learn how to play on the playground of life with other children of God and to play well with others. You become a lifelong learner. That's really what the word disciple meant, is methetes. It was a Greek word for learner. You're a learner. You're a learner, a person that learns about Jesus. We also mean that you're a person that's an adventurer, that takes adventures with Jesus, doesn't just sit still, but takes adventurers, that you're an apprentice of Jesus, that you get your life engaged with doing the things that Jesus encouraged us to do. You don't just think about them, but you actually do them, and that's really important. And then that you're authentic. You're just who you are. You're not putting on airs or pretenses, but that you are authentically who Christ has called you to be. You're a handcrafted original. We're not calling you to be just like me or to be like anybody else. We're calling you to be a Jesus follower, exactly who you are today, the best version of you that's possible. To be a holy risk taker, to be one that would ask Jesus, Jesus, is that you? And would you call me out? To become those kinds of people that take those kinds of holy risks. You're a participator in the things of God. You're an initiator of the things of God. You are an activator, someone that gets things going because God has called you to. You're faith-filled and you're faithful to this faith community. You're a team player. You work with this team to help it advance its mission of disciples making disciples. That means you invest your time and your talent and your treasure in helping this church move along. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about disciples here. Now, you can be a disciple at a different church, and that's fine. But here at Phos, we're asking you to help us move the ball down the field to make disciples who make disciples. And disciples, again, this definition. A disciple has their heart and their head into the things of Jesus, but they also then take their hands and their feet and get active with the things of Jesus. So you bring your whole life, your whole body together into the life and the things of Jesus. And you're on mission at one degree, what we call M1D. This idea that you are on a mission with God wherever you work, wherever you go to school, wherever your children are into sports or whatever they're into, that you are a follower of Jesus in those places. And then lastly, we believe that disciples multiply, that a disciple makes disciples. It's tough. You're not a mature follower of Jesus until other people are following Jesus because of you. So these are the marks of discipleship. These are the marks of a disciple. This is what we're looking for, and this is what we're after. Our mission here at Phos is to take holy risks that make disciples who make disciples. So those are some words about it. Let me give you an image. Now, before I show you the image, I want you to think of a physical. I'm going to give you a physical representative of a spiritual reality. So you're going to see a picture in just a moment. When you see the picture, I don't want you just to see the picture. I want you to think, okay, if this was in spiritual terms, what's going on in this picture? Okay, so here's the picture. All righty. Now let's talk about this. Now we'll talk about the physical side, but realize I'm really talking about a spiritual thing going on here. You could be a huge, like, physical person and be a fantastic follower of Jesus. So don't get confused here, but I'm talking about a spiritual thing now that's going on. Let's imagine this guy. What do you think he's doing? He's rooting his team on. You think so? Okay, what anybody else have another? What do you think he's doing? I think he probably is. However, I'm going to imagine for just a minute that he's watching fitness videos. Like Richard Simmons, maybe. Oh, you can do it. And he is just stuffing another bonbon in his mouth, man. He's just going after another slice of pizza and grab another beer, and let's just sit and watch this thing. And he's just watching these videos, and maybe he even has the videos memorized, and then maybe he starts watching yoga videos, and they're doing the different poses, and the cricket and the frog and the upward dog and downward dog and all this stuff. And he knows all the moves, and he can talk to you. By matter of fact, if you talk to him, he could tell you about all the different fitness gurus and their videos and their stuff, and he may even have manuals on fitness. He may have been reading them, like, well, look, on page 737, there's like this cool thing, and he knows all about the physiology of fitness, and he could talk to you about all this stuff, but is he fit? No. Does watching fitness videos and reading fitness books make you fit? No. What does it take? You got to get up and get going. You got to get active. You may have to change a few things about your input. It's not enough just to take in a lot of information and just know a bunch of stuff. The idea here is that we need to engage with our faith. We need to get up off of our lazy boys and get moving. So imagine, again, this is a spiritual situation. I'm not just talking about physical. As a spectator, Phos Community Church is built around the concept of taking spectators and turning them into participators. We really are not okay with us all just being spectators that watch fitness videos or spiritual videos about Jesus and study our Bibles even for the soul knowledge, soul thing of just having a lot of head knowledge. We're really not okay with that. We're really okay with you studying your Bible. We want you to. And to be involved in small group and to be involved in areas we can learn, but then to take all that and to get moving with it and to build some friendships, your Christ-centered friendships, and get going. Everything in our environment is built around this proposition of taking spectators and turning them into participators. For instance, worship like this is a great place to come, and mostly it's a spectator event, but there's always a call to action. Today, you're going to determine your own call to action. What is it that God is calling you to do? What is it that's going to require faith from you? What does it mean for you to get out of the boat in the weeks ahead? Because in getting out of the boat and exercising your faith, you move from being flabby and fat spiritually to being fit and to joining a team of Christ followers. And this is what we want for you. This is our desire. Growth Track is designed to help you get moving with this. It's the intro to how you become a fit Christ follower, a true disciple here at Phos Community Church. Hope you'll take Growth Track. 401s today. We start 101 again next week, so I hope you'll join us. One of these, and it's after the late service. The description is all in your worship guide. It'll tell you all about it. We'd love for you to do that. We'd love for you to take a mission adventure with us if you've not done that yet. You could take a mission adventure right here at Phos Community Church in June. We're having a live sports camp. At that sports camp, we're going to need dozens of you to come and love on children and help them know about Jesus. You might choose you want to go to Charleston with us. There's still a little time to do that. So if you're interested in that, then in this guide, there is a tear-off portion right over here. All kinds of ways you can respond and things that require faith, your next steps of faith. So consider taking action. Maybe you need to join a small group, or maybe you need to be baptized. I don't know what it is that's going to require faith for you, but everything at Phos is wired to help move you along a path of having more faith in Jesus so that next year you could do even more things with Jesus than you've done before, that you become more adventurous and more part of his mission in the world. That's what we hope happens. So to move you from spectator to participator, more like this, where you're with a team and you're moving and you're getting active. And I hope that's more appealing to you than the other image. So here's the choice. These two images. You can choose either one, to become fitter or to become less fit. We'll call it that. Always a choice. What you do. I can't make it for you. You'll have to choose what you're going to do with this. So to become fitter as a Christ follower means we've got to take holy risk. We've got to do things that seem risky and seem scary. So let's dive into this passage for a few minutes together and go through there. I'm going to be going back through Matthew 14, 22 to 31. That's where I'll be. It won't be on the screens today, but you can grab your Bibles and go through with me if you would like. Hebrews 11:6, this is my paraphrase, says this: without holy risk, it's impossible to please God, because we have to believe that he exists and that he rewards those who seek him. Without holy risk, without faith, you really can't please God. So in this passage, Matthew 14, now I'm coming back to this, it shows us how to have this active faith in God. The text picks up with this immediately, and this was right after a time when Jesus had fed thousands of people with a little bitty lunch, this faith-bending, mind-bending, reality-altering experience these disciples had just had with Jesus. And then Jesus has his disciples get into a boat and go before him onto the other side while he dismissed the crowds. After he had dismissed the crowds, he went up on a mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. So we know that he sent the disciples out sometime before evening. Maybe it was dusk or maybe a few hours before. I don't know. But when evening came, he was there alone. But by then, the boat was a long way from the land, beaten by the waves, for the wind was against them. Now, let's look back at this. Who had the disciples get in the boat? Jesus. What's happening to the disciples? They're in a boat. What's happening? Say again? Yeah, they're getting beaten up in a storm. The waves are getting big and it's surrounding them. And so what's that about? You've probably heard before, if you've been around church before, you've been around preachers before, we'll say something like this sometimes: well, the safest place to be is right there in the center of God's will. I want to tell you, sometimes to be in the center of God's will is to face a storm like none other. They could have avoided the storm by ignoring Jesus' command. They could have stayed on the shore and said, no, Jesus, not today. We've looking out there, see those clouds right over there, Jesus? We've been on this lake a lot. We know what's coming. We ain't going. Thank you very much. And that's where you are today. You can leave this service today, and you can say, I am not going to do what Jesus is asking me to do. I will not. Won't do it. And you can dig your heels in. And you can stay on the shore, and nobody's going to make you go. And really, here's the hard part. Only you will know. Only you will know that you missed the adventure. Only you will know that you didn't take action. You and God. None of the rest of us will. You can fake it to me. Oh, I'm doing great. It's all great. Praise Jesus. It's all wonderful. Good for you. But inside, you're dying a little bit because you're not really following Jesus. You're just kind of hanging out with him sometimes and ignoring most of what he says and doing whatever you want. So you'll have to choose. Which will it be? So he sends them out, and the waves begin to beat against that boat. The boat probably would seat about 25 people. It's not a huge boat. It's not a tiny boat. And we know there were at least 12 disciples on there. There may have been more. Most of these guys would have been around the lake and fishing their whole life, so storms and boats and all this wasn't all that new to them. But let's get the full context of where they are. They're in a boat that's not too big, not too small, but just the right size to be beaten up pretty good in this storm. So much so that they were probably already afraid. And also understand that there was no electricity then. They may have had some type of little lantern burning on the boat somewhere, but they really couldn't see much. So it was dark, and probably incredibly dark out in the middle of that lake. So it's dark. It's in the middle of the night. And they're in a place out on the water in what would be known in that context, in that time in history, as the abyss. You see, there was no submarines, there were no underwater cameras, there were no scuba divers to tell us what's down there. There was only an imagination that was inflamed by lack of information that just made them scared of what was down there. And these sea monsters and this stuff and this spiritual underworld was represented by the water. And they believed that there were dark spirits that inhabited those deep waters. So the abyss was scary. And it was scary, multiplied by dark, multiplied by storm. You ever been there? To an abysmal place where it seems like there's really no hope, when everything's against you? We'll come in and out of seasons like that in our lives. Sometimes we'll come to a place where it seems abysmal. Amen, there is no hope. We're all going to drown. It's all over. We're not going to make it through. Why would Jesus allow us to come to those places? Because clearly, by the way, Jesus sent them. Jesus wasn't an ordinary man. He was God-man. Chances are, Jesus had a pretty good perception about what the weather was going to be when he puts them in the boat and sends them to the other side. Why didn't he just tell them to stay on the shore? Hey, guys, listen, there's a big storm coming. Why don't we sit right here? We'll wait this one out. We'll leave tomorrow. Why does Jesus send them directly into the face of a storm? To test their faith. And secondly, because he's God. And they're not. That's hard. Sobering, isn't it? To know that sometimes we have storms in our life, perhaps to test our faith, perhaps to bring us to a place where we trust him more than we ever have before. You see, the illusion is we've all got boats, don't we? We all have boats that we feel safe in, we know about, and we kind of understand what the boat can do and its capacity to withstand storms and to get us from point A to point B. Your boat might be your job. Or it might be a relationship. It might be a certain skill set that you have, some abilities that you have. But what happens when those abilities start to be taken away? Or what happens when that job is taken away? What are you left with? Faith. And not just faith in faith, but I hope for you, if you're a Christ follower, that you have faith in Christ. That you have faith in a God that rules over all. And it's big enough to handle your storm, because to God, the storm is small. Even though it's huge to you and it's changing everything. Your whole life is swirling around and changing, and you feel like you could just sink down into the abyss at any moment. Your little boat could be capsized by the next wave, and you could be washed out to sea and never be found again. And presumed lost. It could happen. We live life that way a lot of times. We're out on the edge of things and we wonder, will God really save me? Will he really rescue me? I don't know exactly how your story will turn out, but here's the story that we know about Jesus this night. So Jesus waits until the fourth watch of the night. Now to us that doesn't mean much. But think about this. The fourth watch of the night would have been about 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. So how long has Jesus waited to go walk by this boat? Of 6, 8 hours, 9 hours? It's been a while. Now, if you've been in a storm for a while in a boat like that, more than a couple of hours, do you begin to despair a little bit? Yeah, I believe these disciples were about spent. There are going to be moments in your life when the storm around you is going to go long enough for you just to be spent, for you to feel like, I got nothing left. And that may be precisely where God wants you to be, where you got nothing left of you. Because sometimes to come to the shores of faith, where we really trust Jesus, is to come to the end of ourselves, where we don't have the capacity, where we can't do it, where it's impossible for us to go on unless he rescues us. That's where these disciples were in the fourth watch of the night. When the disciples saw him, remember, on this abyss on a dark night, they see this thing walking across the water, and what would you assume? It's a ghost. It's a ghost. There's something out there. It's a ghost. They see the shadow coming at them in the storm, and maybe it's lit up by lightning occasionally. And they're like, wow, what is that? And it's almost like strobophonic. It's just moving with every lightning flash, and you're seeing it move, but you don't know what it is, and it's a ghost. And then Jesus says, listen, take heart. It's I. Don't be afraid. I'm here. Don't be afraid. I'm here. Peter was wise enough at this point. This is a rare moment for Peter, by the way. Peter was a man of action. Generally, he took action, then asked questions. Today, he got it right. As a follower of Jesus, he asked a question before he took action. He said, Lord, if it's really you, then you command me. You tell me to come on out. And this is where many of us are today. We need to look into the storm. We need to listen for the voice of Jesus. And we need to ask him, hey, Jesus, is that really you? Are you really calling me out in the storm? Because when I'm talking about having faith and walking with Jesus, I'm not talking about Red Bull, death-defying stunts for Jesus kinds of stuff. I'm talking about active, true faith in Jesus, who sometimes calls you out onto the water, out into the place where you could fail, out where you have to overcome fear, and where you certainly could fail, for you to learn to trust him. Take heart, it's I, don't be afraid. And Peter had answered him, if it's you, called him to come out on the water. He said, come. So Peter got out of the boat, and he walked on the water, and he came to Jesus. Now that's incredible, isn't it? You ever done that? You ever walked on water? Maybe not physically, but have you ever walked on water, meaning having enough faith to do what Jesus asked you to do? I hope you have. If you haven't, you got to try it. It's life-changing. And you've got stories to tell about your walk with Jesus that others can't tell. Now, we know for sure that one of them got out of the boat. The scriptures don't tell us about the others. I guess the others just watched. They were spectators while there's one participator. Imagine 30, 40 years after that, what Peter could tell his grandkids. Well, this one time I was with Jesus, and we were out, and he sent us out in this boat, and there was this big storm, and we were all scared, and we were about to die, and then we saw this ghost. We thought it was a ghost, and it was Jesus. And Jesus told me to get out of the water. And I walked on the water, kids. You can believe that? I walked on the water. That's a story you could tell. What would the other 12 or 11 or however many other people were in the boat, what would they tell their grandkids? Well, one day, we were out in the boat, and there was this guy named Peter. And you got to make a choice in life about what you're going to be. Will you be the one telling the story about somebody that had faith in Jesus, or will you be the one telling the story about you having faith in Jesus? You have to choose. And I don't know what it means for you to get out on the water today. I don't know what it means for you to be out in the middle of the storm. I don't know what it's going to take. But these are some things I know. That true faith eventually leads to reality-defying action. True faith leads to a place where you defy the odds and you step out into a place where it seems like that things can't work at all. This is what it means to have faith. You see missionaries do this all the time. They step into the unknown where there's no way they could make it, where their lives could be threatened. And they still step into that moment and they begin to change the lives of others around them. What does it mean for you to have faith? Have you ever seen anybody have that kind of faith? This death-defying, water-walking kind of faith where they step out into nothing? And I hope you have. And I hope you'll become that kind of person. It's said of Steve Jobs. I always call him Steve Jobs because this Bible thing going on. Steve Jobs of Apple. Some of the people who were closest to him said it's like he had this reality distortion field going on. That he just ignored reality and began to create and ask for new things to happen when the engineers around him, the people with the spreadsheets and the calculators and the smarts, They're telling him, this can't happen. He's saying, no, this is what needs to happen. Let's figure it out. Let's figure it out. And sometimes in life, you've got to come to a place where you're going to step out with Jesus, if this is what he's calling you to do, and figure it out. And let him guide you. Let him lead you. Ask him, Jesus, is that really you? And if it is, call me out. And today, my hope for you is right now you're beginning to pray, Jesus, call me out. Jesus, call me out. Help me take the step that I need to take. Help me to be a reality-defying person. Another truth is this. If you want to follow Jesus, you must learn to actively trust him more than your reality and more than your fears. Most of us are governed by our fears and our realities more than we're governed by Jesus, aren't we? Most of us look at what we can see and what we can measure, what we can taste and what we can feel, and we trust that more than we trust Jesus. In that storm that night in the abyss, those disciples in the boat had a choice. Was Peter the only one that could have walked on water that night? Is it possible that Jesus was just seeing which one of them? I wonder if any of them will even ask. Peter had the audacity to ask. Do you have the audacity to ask Jesus to invite you out, to do what seems impossible? I hope you do. And it doesn't take much. It's just enough to ask him, Jesus, would you call me? Jesus, would you call me? And I'm hoping that's what you'll do today. And true faith leads to courageous action. It leads to courageous action in the face of fears and the possibility of failure. If there is no possibility of failure, then no faith is required. If it's not possible that it could all fall apart, then there's really no faith required. But life of a follower of Jesus is to, at points, have nothing but Jesus and nothing but faith in him. You see, to become a follower of Jesus is more than just saying a little prayer that you kind of think Jesus is a nice guy and he lived one day, and that is good. That's a good start. But to follow Jesus is to go further. And it's to continue to ask him, Jesus, call me out into the water. Help me to get out there. And this faith, this kind of faith that Peter had, it's not a blind faith. It's a faith that has Jesus squarely in the center of its sights. And it takes action because of Jesus' call. So it's not Red Bull, death-defying stunts for Jesus. It's fact-filled faith in a Christ who calls you out onto the water. Here's the final truth. If you want to be unstoppable as a follower of Jesus, if you want to be that kind of person that has that kind of faith in Jesus, you absolutely, positively must get out of your boat. You got to get out of your boat. Don't know what your boat is today. Don't know what you're hanging on to. Don't know what you're afraid of. But absolutely, you've got to get out.